English talk, culture and connection. Introduction. Did you ever feel a little lost when talking in English, even if you knew the words? Maybe you said hello to a new friend in London, and they just gave a quick, friendly nod and a short all right. This felt different from longer greetings you might be used to. Or maybe you wanted to share a different idea with a coworker in New York, but your polite suggestion sounded too blunt, making things a bit awkward. These times, when our words don't quite land right, happen more than we think. They show us that speaking English is more than just knowing grammar rules and word lists. It's also about understanding the hidden signals, the small hints, and how people naturally talk in different English-speaking places. It's about the feeling behind the words and how that feeling is shaped by culture. At its core, this book looks at a simple but strong idea. To truly connect and talk well in English, you must understand that language and culture are tied together. It's not enough to just say the words. We must also learn the quiet ways people show politeness, how direct they like to be, and how to handle humor, which can be tricky. Getting these right is like having a key to unlock easier talks, help you avoid confusing or even hurtful mistakes, and build better, more real friendships with people from different backgrounds. When we say English talk here, we mean the whole experience of communicating, not just speaking, but listening, understanding, and joining in a way that feels natural and kind to everyone. This is where our main idea comes in: cultural communication nuances. Think of these as the invisible strings that link language to culture. They are the small, often unwritten, rules and ideas that guide how people talk and act in daily life in a certain culture. These nuances are like the unspoken language of politeness, how direct people expect you to be, and how humor is used and understood. They are not the same everywhere English is spoken. What seems polite in Australia might be different in Canada, and what is funny in Ireland might not be funny in Singapore. If we don't notice these small differences, it can cause confusion, accidentally offend someone, or just make talking feel difficult. Like trying to force a square shape into a round hole. Let's look at some examples. Think about politeness. In some English-speaking cultures, asking directly, "Please close the window," is perfectly fine. In others, it might sound too sharp. Someone might prefer to say, "It's a little chilly in here, isn't it?" This gentler way says the same thing, but in a way that feels more polite and less demanding. Then there's being direct. If you ask someone in the United States if they can help you with something, they might say a clear yes, "I can," or "No, I can't." But someone from a culture that likes being less direct might say, "I'll see what I can do," or "That might be difficult," even if they mean no. This isn't about being unclear, it's about keeping things smooth and avoiding saying no directly. And humor. What one person finds very funny, another might find confusing or even rude. Jokes that use sarcasm, for example, depend a lot on people understanding the culture and the tone of voice. Without that shared understanding, a sarcastic comment can be taken as it is said, leading to confusion. These are the kinds of small differences, the cultural communication nuances, that we will explore together. By understanding these nuances, you're not just learning to speak English better, you're learning to connect better. You'll feel more sure of yourself when talking, knowing what's expected, and having fewer moments of not being sure. You'll start to understand and appreciate the many English-speaking cultures and how they shape how people talk. Most importantly, you'll be better able to build real friendships, creating respect and understanding between people. In the next chapters, we will travel through different English-speaking places, finding useful ways to use politeness, directness, and humor well. We'll look at real, situations, and give you tools to help you figure out these cultural communication nuances in your own talks. So, come with us on this journey. See how understanding the cultural heart of English talk can truly change how you communicate and make your connections with the world better. 1. Learning English. Learning English can feel like a big adventure, and it is. Many of us start by opening a book, looking at lists of words, and practicing grammar rules. We learn that to eat is eat, and that we add ed to make it past tense, like ate. This is important, absolutely essential even. But have you ever noticed that sometimes, even when you use the right words and the right grammar, the conversation doesn't go quite as smoothly as you hoped? Maybe someone looks a little confused, or perhaps you feel like you didn't quite connect with them. This is where our journey takes a turn, moving from the pages of a textbook into the vibrant, living world of how people actually talk to each other. Think about it this way. A recipe tells you what ingredients to use and how long to cook them. That's like grammar and words. But the true magic of a delicious meal comes from the chef's touch, the little extra something they add, the way they present it, and the feeling of the kitchen. That extra something in English talking is deeply tied to culture. It's not just about knowing what to say, but how to say it and when. This is what we call cultural communication nuances. These are the small, often unwritten rules and hopes that shape how people interact and communicate within a specific culture. In the context of English, this includes understanding how politeness is shown, the right amount of directness in speech, and the use and understanding of jokes. These nuances are very different between different English-speaking countries and are essential for effective communication across cultures. Ignoring them can lead to confusion, hurt feelings, or failed interactions. Let's consider a simple example. Imagine you want to ask a friend if they can help you with something. In many cultures, a direct request like "Can you help me?" is perfectly fine, but in some English-speaking settings, especially when speaking to someone you don't know very well, or when the request is a bit of a favor, a more indirect approach might be preferred. Instead of saying, "Can you help me move this couch?" you might hear something like, "I'm trying to move this couch, and it's quite heavy. I was wondering if you might have a moment to lend a hand?" The meaning is the same, you need help with the couch. But the second way sounds softer, more polite, and gives the other person an easier way to say yes without feeling forced. The direct question, while grammatically correct, might feel a little too blunt in certain situations. This difference in how directness is used is a key cultural communication nuance. This is precisely what happened to a young student named Anya when she first arrived in London to study. Anya was bright and had studied English diligently. She knew her verbs, her tenses, and a wide range of words. She felt confident. One day she needed to ask her new flatmate, Sarah, if she could borrow a book. Anya walked up to Sarah, who was reading, and said clearly, "Sarah, I need your book." Sarah looked up, a little surprised, and said, "Oh, okay." Anya felt a pang of confusion. Sarah didn't seem very happy about it. Later, Anya overheard Sarah telling another friend, "Anya is so demanding. She just walked up and told me she needed my book." Anya was baffled. She hadn't meant to sound demanding. She just wanted to borrow the book and thought a direct statement was efficient. This experience was a turning point for Anya. She realized that her textbook English, while correct, wasn't always enough. She started paying closer attention to how Sarah and her other British friends spoke. She noticed they often used phrases like "Would you mind if I?" "Do you think it would be possible to?" or "I was hoping." They softened their requests, often adding "please" and "thank you" more often, and sometimes starting a request with a little bit of light chat, like asking about someone's day. Anya learned that in many parts of the UK, directness, especially when asking for something, can sometimes be seen as less polite. It's not that they don't value efficiency, but they also highly value smooth social interactions and giving others space. Anya began to practice these softer ways of speaking. When she wanted to borrow something, she'd say, "Sarah, I was wondering if I could possibly borrow your book for a little while. I promise to take good care of it." The response was immediate and warm. "Oh, of course, Anya. Take it whenever you like." This small shift in her language, guided by understanding cultural communication nuances, made a huge difference in her relationships. So, how can you, as a learner, actively look for and learn about these cultural nuances beyond what is typically found in a language textbook? It's about becoming a detective of conversation and observer of culture. First, listen actively and observe. When you hear native English speakers interact, don't just listen to the words. Listen to the tone of their voice. Do they sound very direct, or do they use many polite phrases? Do they interrupt each other, or do they wait patiently for their turn? Pay attention to body language too, although that's a whole other layer of communication. For example, in some English-speaking cultures, direct eye contact is seen as a sign of honesty and engagement. In others, prolonged direct eye contact might feel too intense. These are subtle but important cues. Second, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask your English-speaking friends or teachers why they said something a particular way. You could say, "I noticed you said, 'Would you mind if I open the window?' instead of just, 'Can I open the window?' Is there a reason for that?" Most people are happy to explain their language and culture. They might say, "Yes, it sounds a bit softer, less like a command." This kind of questioning helps you build a bridge between your understanding and their way of speaking. Third, read and watch diverse media. While textbooks give you a foundation, movies, TV shows, podcasts, and books from different English-speaking countries offer a window into real-life conversations. Watch a British comedy, an American drama, an Australian documentary, or listen to a Canadian podcast. Notice how characters interact. How do they greet each other? How do they disagree? How do they apologize? You'll start to see patterns emerge. For instance, you might notice that in American culture, people tend to be more openly enthusiastic and use more positive affirmations. "That's great," "awesome," in everyday conversation compared to, say, some parts of Ireland where a more understated or even self-deprecating humor might be common. Fourth, practice, 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 and be brave. You will make mistakes. Every language learner does, and every human does. The key is to be brave enough to try, to put yourself in situations where you have to communicate, and to learn from those moments. If you say something that causes confusion, don't get discouraged. See it as a learning opportunity. You can even gently correct yourself or ask for clarification. For example, if you realize you were too direct, you could say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I meant to ask, could you possibly?" Let's look at another aspect, humor. Humor is a fantastic way to connect with people, but it's also one of the trickiest cultural communication nuances to navigate. What one person finds hilarious, another might not understand or might even find offensive. For example, sarcasm, where you say the opposite of what you mean for humorous effect, is very common in British English. A Brit might say, "Oh, brilliant weather we're having," when it's pouring rain. They expect you to understand they're being sarcastic. If you take it literally, the joke falls flat. In contrast, in some other cultures, humor might be more about storytelling, wordplay, or observational jokes. A learner who doesn't understand the cultural context of sarcasm might miss the humor entirely or be confused by what seems like a strange statement. Consider the idea of small talk. In many English-speaking cultures, especially in North America and the UK. Starting brief, light conversations about neutral topics like the weather, weekend plans, or current events is a common way to build connection and ease into deeper interactions. Someone might say, "Nice day, isn't it?" as a friendly opening. In some cultures, this might seem superficial or unnecessary if there's no immediate practical purpose. However, in these English-speaking settings, it's a social lubricant, a way of acknowledging the other person and signaling friendliness. Not engaging in small talk or responding too briefly can sometimes be seen as being unfriendly or distant. Learning to participate in small talk, even if it feels a bit strange at first, is a valuable skill for building connections. The way we express disagreement also carries cultural weight. In some English-speaking settings, it's common to disagree quite directly, perhaps starting it with phrases like "I see your point, but I disagree," or "I'm not sure that's entirely accurate." In other settings, people might use more indirect language, softening their disagreement with phrases like "That's an interesting perspective," "Have you considered," or "I understand where you're coming from." However, the key is to be aware that direct disagreement, while sometimes necessary, can be perceived differently depending on the cultural background of the person you're speaking with. The journey of learning English is therefore not just about memorizing words and rules. It's about opening your mind and heart to the rich tapestry of cultures that speak this language. It's about understanding that the same sentence can carry different meanings, different intentions, and different emotional weight depending on who is speaking and where they are from. By actively observing, asking questions, consuming diverse media, and practicing with courage, you begin to unlock the deeper layers of English communication. You move beyond just speaking the language to truly connecting with people. This understanding of cultural communication nuances is not just a helpful addition to your learning, it is, in many ways, the very heart of becoming a fluent and confident English speaker. It allows you to build stronger relationships, avoid misunderstandings, and navigate the wonderfully diverse world of English conversation with grace and confidence. 2. Cultural differences in communication. When we learn a new language, we often focus only on words and rules. But people also speak with their feelings and how they live. This is very true for English. Many countries speak English, like America, England, Australia, and India. Each place has its own way of talking. These special ways are called cultural communication nuances. Think about it. If you meet someone from another country who speaks English, they might say things in a way you don't expect. Maybe they are very open, or maybe they are very polite in a way that seems too formal. This is not because they are wrong. It is because their culture taught them to talk in a certain way. Knowing these cultural communication nuances helps you have better talks and make real friends. Let's start with politeness. Politeness is not the same everywhere. When we want to be nice, we use polite words. But polite means different things in different places. In some English-speaking places, saying please and thank you a lot is very important. In other places, people might be polite by not asking for things too directly. Imagine you are in a shop. In one country, you might say, "I would like a coffee, please." This is normal and polite. But in another English-speaking country, someone might say, "Can I get a coffee?" Or "Just coffee, please." To someone used to the first way, the second way might sound too short, maybe even a little rude. But for the person saying it, they think they are being polite and quick. They are not trying to be rude, they are just following their culture's way of speaking. This also happens when you ask for something. If you need help, you might say, "Could you please help me with this?" This is a common and polite way to ask. However, in some cultures, people might say, "I'm having a bit of trouble with this. Could you take a look?" They are being polite by explaining their problem first, instead of asking directly for help. This is a cultural communication nuance. It's about making the request sound less demanding. What about saying no? In some cultures, saying no straight out can feel rude. So, people might say things like, "I'm not sure if I can do that," or "that might be difficult," or "let me think about it." For someone used to a clear no, these answers can be confusing. They might wonder, does that mean yes? This is a cultural communication nuance where people speak in a roundabout way to be polite. So, politeness is not just about the words, it's about the feeling behind the words and how they are said. What feels warm and friendly in one culture might feel stiff and formal in another. Being direct vs. being indirect. This idea of being direct or indirect is a big part of cultural communication nuances. Some cultures really value honesty and being clear. They believe that saying exactly what you mean is the best way to avoid confusion. These people tend to be direct. Let's say your friend asks what you think about their new haircut. If you are from a direct culture, you might say, "Honestly, I don't think it suits you very well." You are being honest and clear. Your friend knows exactly what you think. But what if you were from a culture that prefers to be indirect? You might say, "It's very different. You've certainly changed your look." Or you might talk about something else. "Your shirt looks nice today." The point is, you are avoiding a direct no or a bad comment. You are trying to be kind and not hurt your friend's feelings. This difference can cause problems. If someone from a direct culture talks to someone from an indirect culture, the direct person might seem rude. The indirect person might seem dishonest or like they are hiding something. On the other hand, if an indirect person talks to a direct person, the indirect person might seem unclear, and the direct person might get frustrated. Think about giving feedback at work. In some places, feedback is very direct. Your boss might say, "This report needs more information in section 3. You should also check your spelling." They are telling you exactly what is wrong and what to do. In other places, feedback might be given more gently. Your boss might say, "This is a good start. I really like how you've written the beginning. For section 3, perhaps we could add a bit more detail to make the argument stronger." And maybe a quick read-through for any small mistakes would be helpful. See the difference? The message is the same, the report needs to be better, but the way it's said is very different. This is a cultural communication nuance at work. This can have a big effect. If you are new to English and in a situation where directness is expected, and you are indirect, people might not understand what you need or think. If you are too direct in a culture that likes indirectness, you might accidentally offend someone, and they might not want to talk to you anymore. This can lead to missed chances, bad relationships, and feeling like you are not understood. The art of humor. Humor is a great way to connect with people. Laughing together can build bridges and make talks fun. However, what one person finds funny, another might not. This is another area where cultural communication nuances are very important. Sarcasm is a good example. Sarcasm is when you say the opposite of what you mean, often to be funny or to make a point. For example, if it's raining hard and someone says, "What lovely weather we're having," they are using sarcasm. In some English-speaking cultures, like England or parts of Australia, sarcasm is common. People use it often, and it's usually seen as a joke. But in other cultures, sarcasm can be confusing. Someone might think you really like the rain. Or worse, they might feel you are being mean or making fun of them. Making fun of yourself is another type. This is when you joke about yourself, often in a humble way. For example, if you spill something, you might laugh and say, "Oh, I'm such a clumsy person." In some cultures, This is seen as charming and relatable. It shows you don't take yourself too seriously. However, in other cultures, making fun of yourself too much can be seen as not having confidence or even as a bit strange. People might think, "Why are they saying that? They seem fine to me." The danger with humor is that it can quickly go from funny to hurtful if the listener doesn't understand the cultural context. What might be a light joke in one place could be very insulting in another. This is why, when you are learning English and talking to people from different backgrounds, it's often safer to use simpler, more common types of humor, or to watch how others use humor before you try it. Not understanding humor can lead to awkward silences or, even worse, hurt feelings. Nonverbal cues matter. Communication is not just about the words we say. It's also about how we say them, our body language, and even the space between us. These are called nonverbal cues, and they are full of cultural communication nuances. Let's talk about eye contact. In many Western cultures, looking directly into someone's eyes when you speak is seen as honest, confident, and respectful. It shows you are paying attention. But in some other cultures, looking directly into someone's eyes for too long, especially with older people or bosses, can be seen as disrespectful or challenging. People might look down to show they are humble and respectful. If you are from a culture that likes direct eye contact, and you meet someone from a culture that doesn't, you might wrongly think they are not paying attention or are being dishonest. They, in turn, might feel uncomfortable with your direct gaze. What about silence? In some cultures, silence during a talk is uncomfortable. People feel they need to fill every moment with sound. If there's a pause, they might think something is wrong or that the other person is bored or unhappy. However, in other cultures, silence is normal and can even be a sign of thinking or agreeing. A pause might give people time to think about what was said before they reply. It can be a moment to reflect. If you come from a culture that dislikes silence and you are talking to someone from a culture that likes it, you might end up talking too much, or you might think they are not interested because they are silent. This is a subtle but powerful cultural communication nuance. Personal space is another one. How close do people stand when they talk? In some cultures, people stand quite close when they talk. This can feel friendly. In other cultures, people prefer more personal space. If someone stands too close, it can feel like they are invading your space or making you uncomfortable. If you are used to standing far away and someone stands very close, you might step back without thinking, which the other person might see as unfriendly. These nonverbal cues are often learned from a very young age. We don't even think about them, they just feel natural. But when we meet people from different cultures, our natural way of communicating might be completely different from theirs. How differences lead to misunderstandings. So, how do these differences in politeness, directness, and humor actually cause problems? Imagine you are working on a project with people from different countries. Let's say you need to tell your colleague, Sarah, that her part of the project isn't quite ready. You are from a culture that likes directness. You might go to Sarah and say, "Sarah, your section is not good enough. It needs a lot of work before the deadline." Sarah, however, is from a culture that prefers indirectness and politeness. She might feel hurt and embarrassed by your bluntness. She might think you are being mean and might not want to finish her work. She might also feel that you don't respect her. What if Sarah's culture also uses indirectness to say no? If you ask her if she can finish her part by tomorrow, she might say, "I will try my best," or "That might be a bit difficult." You, being direct, might hear this as "Yes, she will try," and expect it to be done. But Sarah might have meant, "No, it's not possible, but I don't want to upset you by saying it directly." When tomorrow comes and her part isn't ready, you might get angry, thinking she didn't try hard enough. She, in turn, might feel misunderstood and unfairly blamed. This is a direct result of cultural communication nuances. Humor can also cause issues. You might make a sarcastic joke about a small mistake someone made, thinking it's funny and will make things lighter. But if they don't understand sarcasm, they might feel you are making fun of them and their mistake. This can create tension and make them feel insecure. These misunderstandings are not about being right or wrong. They are about different ways of talking. When these ways clash, it can lead to confusion. People don't understand what is being said or meant. Offense. People feel insulted, hurt, or not respected. Failed interactions. Projects don't get done, friendships don't form, and chances are missed. The real-world consequences. The effect of not paying attention to these cultural communication nuances can be quite big in real life. In business, a manager who is 3. Politeness, directness, and humor. Learning English opens up a new world. In this world, people talk and connect in many ways. English is more than just words and rules. It's also about how we say things. This how is often shaped by culture. We call this cultural communication nuances. These are the small, often hidden rules that guide how people talk to each other. They are like a secret code for a culture. They include how polite we are, how directly we speak, and how we use jokes. These rules are different in different English-speaking places. If we don't understand them, we might confuse people, or even make them sad. Our friendships might not grow as strong as we want. Let's look closely at 3 important parts of these cultural communication nuances: being polite, speaking directly, and using humor. These 3 things can make our English talks go smoothly and be friendly. Or they can cause problems and confusion. Being polite changes with culture. Think about asking for something. In your own language, you probably have a natural way to do it. You know what sounds polite and what doesn't. When you speak English, this can be hard because what is polite in one English-speaking place might not be polite in another. For example, imagine you need to ask a friend to borrow a book. You might say, "Can I have your book?" This is clear. But in some English-speaking cultures, it might sound too direct, especially if you don't know the person well. Instead, people might use softer words to make the request sound gentler. They might say, "Would it be possible for me to borrow your book?" Or, "I was wondering if I could possibly borrow your book." These sentences use words like would, possible, and wondering. This makes the request sound less like a demand and more like a kind question. This is a common way to show politeness in places like the United Kingdom or in more formal situations in North America. It's like wrapping your request in soft words. The way we use titles also shows politeness. In some cultures, it's very important to use Mr. or Miss or Doctor when you talk to someone, especially if they are older or in charge. For instance, you might always call your teacher a Miss Smith or Doctor. But in other English-speaking places, especially in relaxed settings, people might start using first names quickly. Your teacher might say, "Please, call me Sarah," after a few classes. This doesn't mean they are being rude. It's just a different way to show they are friendly and want to have a less formal connection. And what about saying sorry? Some people seem to say sorry a lot, even for small things. If someone bumps into you a little, they might say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Or if they are a bit late, they might say, "Sorry, I'm late." Saying sorry often is a way to show they care about others and understand any small trouble caused. It's a way to keep talks going smoothly. In other cultures, people might only say sorry when they feel they made a big mistake. If you hear someone saying sorry often in English, it usually means they are being polite and thoughtful, not that they are always doing something wrong. So, being polite in English is not just about saying please and thank you. It's about understanding the small ways people soften their words, show respect with titles, and use apologies to keep friendships strong. These cultural communication nuances mean that what feels natural to you might sound different to someone from another English-speaking background. Speaking directly can be good or bad. Now, let's talk about being direct. Sometimes being direct is good. It means saying what you mean clearly and without hiding your thoughts. In some parts of the English-speaking world, like in business in some parts of the United States or in Australia, people often like directness. They see it as honest and quick. If something needs to be changed, they might say, "This needs to be fixed." They want to get to the point fast. However, this same directness can be a problem in other situations or cultures. If you are too direct, people might think you are rude, angry, or not very thoughtful. Imagine you are working on a project with someone from a culture that likes indirectness. If you say, "This report is full of mistakes," they might feel hurt or get defensive. They might think you are attacking them. A more polite way to handle this in some English-speaking contexts would be to say something like, "Perhaps we could look at improving this part of the report," or "I have a few ideas for this action." These sentences are less like a fight. They suggest working together and offer help instead of pointing out mistakes directly. This way is often liked in cultures like the UK, where indirectness is an important part of politeness. It's about helping someone get better, not telling them they are wrong. Saying no is another area where directness can be tricky. A simple no can feel very final and sometimes harsh. In many English-speaking cultures, people often prefer to give a reason or an explanation when they say no. Instead of just "No, I can't help you," they might say, "I'm afraid I can't help you right now because I have a very busy schedule, but maybe I can help you next week." This gives the other person more information and makes the refusal softer. It shows that you are not just saying no, but that there are real reasons why you can't help. The difference between American English and British English is often noticed when we talk about directness. Americans are sometimes seen as more direct, while British people are often seen as more indirect. This is a general idea, of course, and people are all different. But it shows how these cultural communication nuances work. What one person sees as clear and fast, another might see as blunt and impolite. Understanding this difference helps us change our words to build better connections. We need to learn when to be clear and to the point, and when to use softer words to protect feelings and keep peace. Humor, the most difficult area. Of all the cultural communication nuances, humor is probably the hardest. What makes one person laugh can make another person confused or even upset. Humor is deeply connected to our culture, our shared experiences, and what we find funny. One of the most common types of humor in some English-speaking cultures, especially in the UK, is sarcasm and irony. Sarcasm is when you say the opposite of what you mean, often to be funny or to make a point. For example, if it's raining hard and someone says, "Lovely weather we're having, isn't it?" They are being sarcastic. In cultures where sarcasm is common, people understand the meaning. But if you are not used to this, you might think the person really likes the bad weather. This can cause confusion. Irony is similar. It's when what you expect to happen is different from what actually happens. For example, a fire station burning down would be ironic. When used in talking, it can be a very subtle kind of humor. Again, without understanding the culture, it's easy to miss the joke or, even worse, misunderstand what the speaker really feels. Making fun of yourself is another type of humor that is quite popular in some English-speaking countries. This is when people tell jokes about themselves, their own mistakes, or their own faults. For example, someone might say, "I'm really bad at cooking. I once burned water." This is often used to make oneself seem more friendly and relatable. It can help people feel more comfortable. But in other cultures, making fun of yourself too much might seem like you don't have confidence or respect for yourself. People might worry that you don't take yourself seriously. The topics that are okay to joke about also change from culture to culture. What might be a harmless joke in one place could be a sensitive topic in another. For example, jokes about politics, religion, or even certain personal traits can be very risky if you don't know your audience well. It's always safer to stick to lighter, more general topics when you are not sure. The goal of humor is usually to connect with people, to make them feel good, and to build a good relationship. But when cultural communication nuances are involved, humor can easily go wrong. It can create distance instead of closeness. The key is to listen carefully to how people who speak English as their first language use humor, to watch how they react, and to be careful when you try it yourself. It's often better to be understood than to try to be funny and risk being misunderstood. How they work together and what happens. It's important to see that politeness, directness, and humor don't happen separately. They often work together. For example, someone might say something direct, but make it softer by using a very polite tone of voice and adding a small, gentle joke at the end. This mix can make a statement that could be seen as critical feel more like helpful advice. When we don't understand these cultural communication nuances, the results can be big. Imagine a situation where someone is being very direct, and you are used to indirectness. You might feel attacked or disrespected. On the other hand, if someone is being very indirect, and you are used to directness, you might feel they are not being clear, are avoiding the point, or are even untrustworthy because they aren't getting to the point. These misunderstandings can lead to damaged relationships. Colleagues might not trust each other, friendships might suffer, and business deals could fail. Chances can be missed because people are afraid to speak up or because they misunderstand what others mean. It can also lead to feelings of frustration and being left out. You might feel like you are always making mistakes, even when you are trying your best. And in the worst cases, these misunderstandings can make bad ideas about different groups of people seem true. Think about a time you might have felt something like this. Perhaps you met someone from another English-speaking country and your conversation felt a bit awkward. Maybe you said something you thought was friendly, but they seemed a little quiet or reserved. Or maybe they said something that surprised you and you weren't sure how to respond. These moments are not failures. They are chances to learn. They show us that understanding how people use politeness, directness, and humor in English is not just about learning new words. It's about learning to connect with people in a deeper way, to show respect for their background, and to build trust. This understanding prepares us for the next important step in our communication journey. It's not enough to just know that these differences exist. We must also be willing to listen carefully when others speak and to ask for more information when we are unsure. When we do this, we show that we care about the connection and that we want to understand. This desire to learn and change is the true heart of good communication across cultures in English. 4. Understanding culture to improve communication. English is more than just words and rules. It is a way to understand how people think and feel. Imagine learning to cook a new food. You need the recipe, the words, and rules. But you also need to know about the food itself, how to cook it, and the old ways of making it to make it taste good and know its story. English is like that. To really talk with people who speak English, we need to know the culture that makes them talk the way they do. Sometimes, when we learn a new language, we focus only on getting the words right and making our sentences correct. This is good, but what happens when you say something perfectly correct in English and the other person looks confused or even a little sad? It feels like a puzzle with missing parts. The missing parts are often the small cultural differences in talking. These are the quiet rules and ideas that guide how people talk and act in different places where English is spoken. They are like a secret way of talking. If you don't know it, you might feel left out or make a mistake without knowing. Let me tell you a short story. When I first taught English in a new country, I met a student named Anya. Anya was very smart. Her English grammar was almost perfect, and she knew many words. She understood hard ideas and could explain them well. One day, Anya worked on a group project with some friends from Australia. They were talking about ideas for their presentation. Anya had a clear idea about how to arrange the slides. She thought it was the best way. So she said, "This is the best way. We must do it this way." She said it with belief, thinking she was helping the group make the best choice. But her Australian friends became quiet. They did not agree right away. Anya was confused. She thought her idea was good, and she had explained it well. Why were they not excited? Later, one of her friends, a nice woman named Sarah, told Anya gently that her idea was good, but the way she said it felt too strong. In Australia, when people work in a group, they often like suggestions to be said more softly. Instead of saying we must do it this way, it is more common to say something like, "I haven't idea. What do you think about doing it this way? Or maybe we could think about this way." This does not mean Anya's idea was bad or wrong. It just meant that the way she said it, how direct it was, did not match the usual small cultural differences in talking for that group. Anya learned that day that even with perfect grammar, how you say something can make a big difference. This is what we mean when we say language is like a cultural mirror. English, as spoken in places like London, Sydney, or New York, shows the values and history of those places. For example, in many Western English-speaking cultures, being an individual is very important. This means people often share their own thoughts and ideas directly. They are encouraged to be unique and have their own ideas. This can lead to talking in a way that is low context. This means that most of the meaning is in the words themselves. People usually say exactly what they mean. On the other hand, in some other English-speaking cultures, especially those where the group is more important than the individual, the harmony of the group might matter more than one person's direct opinion. In these high-context cultures, people might talk in a less direct way. They might hint at what they mean and expect others to understand based on the situation, their relationship, and what they already know. The meaning is not just in the words, but in what is around them. So when Anya, who might be used to more direct talking, spoke to her Australian friends, her directness was a small cultural difference in talking that did not match their wish for a softer, more team-like suggestion. Her friends, in turn, might have their own small cultural differences in talking that make them less direct than Anya might expect. This is not about one way being right and the other wrong. It is about understanding that different cultures have different ways of showing respect, agreeing, and sharing ideas. These hidden rules are everywhere when you talk. Let's think about being polite. What makes someone polite? In some English-speaking cultures, being polite might mean being very direct but also thinking about the other person's feelings. You might say, "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have a quick question." You are being clear that you were interrupting, but you make it softer with an apology and a promise that it will be quick. In other cultures, politeness might be shown by not being direct. You might not say no straight away. Instead, you might say, "That's an interesting idea," or "I'll have to think about that," which can often mean no. In a polite way, if you were just starting to learn and hear that's an interesting idea, you might think the person really likes your idea and wants to talk more about it. But if you do not understand the small cultural differences in talking, you might miss that it is a polite way of saying no. This can cause confusion, where you keep sharing your idea, and the other person feels more and more uncomfortable because you are not understanding their quiet signals. Humor is another area where small cultural differences in talking can cause big mistakes. What one person finds funny, another might find strange or even hurtful. For example, in some English-speaking cultures, sarcasm is very common. Sarcasm is when you say the opposite of what you mean, often to be funny or to make a point. If someone says, "Oh, that's just great," when something bad happens, they do not really mean it's great. They mean it's very bad. If you are not used to sarcasm, you might believe their words and think they are happy about the bad thing. This can cause a lot of confusion. In other cultures, humor might be gentler, based on shared experiences or playing with words. They might not use sarcasm as much. So, if you use sarcasm in a culture that does not understand it, your attempt at humor can fail, or worse, be seen as being rude or even mean. The main thing to remember is that just knowing the meaning of a word or the rule for a sentence is not enough to talk well in English. We need to become like detectives, watching and learning the small cultural differences in talking that are happening. How can you, as a learner, actively watch and learn these hidden rules? It takes practice and a willingness to pay attention. First, listen carefully. When you talk with English speakers, try to notice how they say things, not just what they say. Do they use many words that make things softer, like maybe, perhaps, a little bit? Do they often ask questions to get agreement, like, "Does that make sense?" Or "What do you think?" Or are they more direct, saying their ideas clearly and expecting you to do the same? Second, watch their body language and listen to their voice. These are often part of how they communicate. A smile can change the meaning of words. A sigh can show they are not happy. Looking straight at someone might be seen as confident in one culture, but perhaps rude in another. Third, ask questions, but do it politely. If you are not sure about something, it is okay to ask. You could say, "I am still learning about how people talk here. Could you help me understand what you mean by that?" Most people are happy to help if they see you are really trying to learn and show respect. Fourth, read and watch. Pay attention to how people talk in movies, TV shows, and books from different English-speaking countries. Notice the conversations. How do they agree? How do they disagree? How do they make jokes? Fifth, be brave and try. You will make mistakes. Everyone does, even people who speak English all the time. The important thing is to learn from those mistakes. If someone looks confused or reacts in a way you did not expect, try to think why. Was it something you said? Was it how you said it? Let's go back to Anya. After her experience, she started to pay more attention. She noticed that when her Australian friends suggested something, they often used phrases like, "I was thinking, maybe we could try," or "what if we considered." She also noticed that they would often stop and wait for others to share their thoughts before moving on. She started to practice using these softer phrases herself. It felt a little strange at first, like wearing shoes that are a bit too big, but she kept trying. And slowly, her conversations got better. Her classmates became more involved, and Anya felt more sure that her message was being understood the way she wanted. She was not just speaking English, she was speaking it in a way that connected with the people listening. Understanding these small cultural differences in talking is not about changing who you are. It is about adding tools to your way of talking. It is about being able to change your message so that it is understood and respected by the people you are talking to. When you can do this, you do more than just share information. You start building real connections. You show respect for the other person's culture, and in return, they are more likely to respect yours. This leads to easier conversations, fewer mistakes, and stronger, more meaningful relationships, whether you are making friends, working with people, or just living your life in a place where English is spoken. Being able to understand and use these quiet cultural signals is what truly makes your English go from just being correct to being useful and connecting. It is the difference between talking to someone and talking with them. It is about knowing that behind every word is a cultural background, a set of shared understandings that shape meaning. Without this awareness, even the most grammatically perfect sentence can miss the mark. It is like having a beautiful song, but not understanding the beat or the tune. You can sing the notes, but you miss the music. Once we understand that language is a living expression of culture, we can start to look at the specific ways these cultural differences appear in everyday talks. The next step is to look at how politeness, which is very important for showing respect, is shaped by these cultural views. Conclusion: learning to speak English is more than just learning words and rules. It's like learning to get around a new town. You need to know the streets, but you also need to know how people act to feel welcome and make friends. This book started with the idea that English is tied to the people who speak it. To talk well and make friends, we need to look past just the words. Our goal was to help you feel sure of yourself, not just to say the right things, but to understand how people connect in quiet ways. This helps you avoid confusion and build better friendships. This journey has given you a special guide for your English learning adventure. In the past chapters, we learned that understanding English means understanding its heart, its culture. We looked at cultural communication nuances. Think of these as the hidden rules for talking in English-speaking places. They are the small things that guide how people talk and act, and they are not always written down. For example, we saw how politeness can be shown in many ways. In some English-speaking places, asking directly is fine. In others, people like to suggest things more softly. We saw how please and thank you are important. We also learned that people sometimes try to avoid saying no directly to keep feeling safe. This is sometimes called saving face. We also talked about being direct. Some places, like parts of America, are very direct. Other places, like the UK, might use softer words. Knowing when to be direct and when to be gentle is a key nuance. And then there's humor. It's a great way to connect, but it can be tricky if you don't get the local jokes. We touched on these and other small, but important details, like how to make small talk or how to disagree nicely. Remember when we talked about how that's an interesting idea can sometimes mean I don't agree, depending on how it's said. These nuances matter because they help us avoid mistakes and show we respect how others communicate. The real strength comes from having a curious and open mind, not just knowing these rules. It's like being a detective, watching the world. When you listen to English speakers, on TV or in person, pay attention not just to the words, but how they say them. Notice their tone of voice, their body language, and where they are. When you see differences, be curious, not judgmental. Ask yourself, why might they say it this way? This kind of watching and understanding helps you know the why behind the words. When you think this way about talking, your worry about speaking English will start to go away. You'll feel more confident because you'll know more about what to expect. This confidence helps you build real connections with people. It helps you avoid awkward moments and have good interactions instead. Remember, language is like a window to a culture. By understanding the small parts of English talk, you get to know the people and their views better. Your journey with English is not over. In many ways, it's just starting. The best way to keep growing is to keep practicing. Use what you've learned in your talks, with friends, coworkers, or even when you're alone. Don't be afraid to try new things. Look for chances to talk with people from different English-speaking places. You might make mistakes, and that's okay. Every mistake is a chance to learn and get better. Be patient with yourself. The goal is not to be perfect right away, but to make steady progress and understand more. Keep your curiosity alive. Keep watching, listening, and learning from every talk. By keeping the cultural communication nuances in mind, you'll have a guide for many situations. Think of this awareness as your own special skill, a kind of superpower that will open doors to new friends, new experiences, and a better understanding of the world. Mastering English talk, with all its cultural layers, is truly about more than just speaking a language. It's about building bridges, helping people understand each other, and connecting on a deeper, more real level. It's about changing talking from a hard thing into a chance for real connection. We wish you the very best as you keep exploring the rich world of English communication. May your talks be clear, your connections be strong, and your journey be full of wonderful discoveries. The world is waiting for you to share your voice.